The secret to understanding John's theology is the discovery of his deeply Jewish understanding of God's self-revelation in the Hebrew Scriptures. This secret is the key that unlocks the door to understanding who Jesus claimed to be.
And offered him a meal. So John, what are you talking about that no one has ever seen God? John is speaking theologically. He's speaking theologically, and I'm going to tell you what that means. It means he's speaking through the lens of a certain way of talking about God. And the way of talking about God that he's speaking through, we find later written down in traditional translations of the Hebrew Bible into Aramaic, representing a thought form that was, of course, alive and well in John's day. And it goes something like this. Whenever someone in the Hebrew Bible saw God, talked to God like face to face, had this interaction where his hand is being extended or he's acting in human ways, that we're seeing God as some sort of divine man, that being is referred to as the word of the Lord. In Aramaic, word is memra, and in the actual writing down of these translations, the name of God is never spelled out, so you could assume that it's memar de Adonai or memar de Maria. Either way, it means the word of the Lord. Memra, the word. So whenever people saw God, they saw the word, okay? Whenever people saw God, they saw the word. And the first time we get this like totally explicitly is with Jeremiah, that the word of the Lord came to him and extended his hand to him. Okay, so when the people are encountering God as this divine man, right, whether he looks normal or he looks shiny, and that sounds totally crass, but I mean, let's look at the imagery used. Either there's this incredible appearance that'll make you fall like you're dead, or looks like a regular man at first. Either way, this is the divine man, and when you see that, that's the word. This is very Jewish. And in fact, these translations called Targumim are in use to this day, And whenever God is interacting directly in what will be referred to sometimes as an anthropomorphic way, which just means the form of a man, right? That whenever that's happening, that's the word of the Lord, all right? And I could take you through myriad examples. Maybe we'll do a video where we go through some of the fun ones, right? But like the word of the Lord made man in his image. Okay, that's one of my favorites. In one of the old Targums, it says, in the beginning, the Son perfected the heavens and the earth. Very interesting stuff, okay? We could go through those sometime. Maybe I'll make a video where I write them out and explain it to you. But bottom line is this. John is speaking through a theological lens. And in fact, this existed also in a different kind of way, in a different sort of greater philosophical grid, but existed in a form with Greek-speaking Jews. This is exemplified by Philo of Alexandria, a basically contemporary Jewish philosopher talking about the Logos, the word. So what people were wrestling with was this idea of how could God, who is uncreated and has all these different attributes, later theologians would refer to as either divine simplicity or his omniscience or his omnipresence, or all these different things that must be true about God. How could it be when people see him, or that he interacts in this very personal, individual, sometimes you might say small way in the human narrative, specifically with Jewish people, in the narrative presented in the Hebrew Bible? How could that be? Well, the way they talked about that, the way that they made that make sense was by referring to God's eminent personal divine man activities as the Word. Is that a little bit of an oversimplification? It is, but it gets the idea across and it's accurate. When Jews thought of people seeing God, at least Jews of John's theological strain, when people in the Hebrew Bible were seeing God, what they were actually seeing was the word of the Lord. And this makes sense even if you're thinking about something from the basic idea of spatial relativity between objects, right? If I'm going to see something entirely, right? If I'm going to hold a pencil and I'm going to see it all in front of me, it's got to somehow be in my visual field smaller. Like I've got to have this big visual field within which this one little thing can appear that I can say I saw it, like I saw all of it. Maybe I have to rotate it, but I saw all of it as this smaller thing within my greater visual field. Well, if you think about trying to see all of what it means for God to be who God is as uncreated, fashioner of the entire heavens and the earth, trying to see him as something small in your greater visual field, that immediately becomes sort of absurd to imagine that, right? We can't see God in that way, but God can appear to us. He can, if you will, focus his light in one place in space and time for us to see him and be made known. And in fact, that is the claim of the authors of the Hebrew Bible, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, that the Lord can and does make himself, visually, auditorily, even tangibly available to those whom he chooses to reveal himself. And what John is saying is basically this. That way we think about God appearing to people in the Hebrew Bible? Yes, he did it, but he did it again in a very special way. He didn't just appear as a man. He became a child of the human race, of the Adamic race. He was born as one of us, and using this wording that's like the tabernacle wording, that he set up his tabernacle among us. So listen, my Jewish friend, if you think it's okay that there could be this tabernacle that's made in the wilderness with all these skins, and there's gold and there's wood being fashioned and all these objects, and then God dwells in it, his presence is there, and something similar happens in Solomon's temple, well then you have to understand that it's also possible for God to pitch a tent of human flesh. He can become one of us by entering the human race and taking on human nature. That's who Jesus of Nazareth is. And see, John, to his intended audience, can write exactly this way, and they know what he means. They know what he means. In fact, I have said that John 1, with obviously the distinctive of John 1 being the incarnation, but if you take the incarnational aspect out of John 1, much of John 1 is a wonderful synopsis, a wonderful summary of the theology found in the Targumim, of this Aramaic tradition of translating the Hebrew Bible and interpreting it in the translation